The Echo Algorithm by Edwina Longbottom, Chapter 1, The Unveiling. The grand auditorium pulsed with energy, an almost tangible hum of anticipation. Rows of seats filled with top executives, tech enthusiasts, scientists, and journalists, all of them buzzing with whispered speculations. The stage was a marvel in itself, draped in shimmering metallic panels that reflected the soft, ethereal blue lights. The centerpiece was a sleek podium, its holographic display casting dancing shapes into the air. This was the future made manifest. Dr. Mara Calloway stood backstage, her palms cold despite the warm glow of the spotlight bleeding through the curtain. She adjusted the collar of her tailored white jacket, a uniform of modern brilliance that marked her as the architect of today's event. Her chest tightened as she glanced at her reflection in the mirrored wall, sharp, confident, every bit the visionary the world believed her to be. But beneath the surface, the waves of doubt churned. The Echo Algorithm, her life's work, the technology that promised to forever alter humanity's relationship with memory. In mere moments, she would step onto that stage and introduce it to the world. Yet as the applause roared from the audience, she hesitated, fingers brushing the edge of the curtain. "You've got this," murmured Sam, her trusted colleague, Pei, standing by her side. His voice was meant to reassure, but she caught the faint tremor in his words, an echo of her own anxiety. Mara nodded, forcing a smile. "Let's hope so." As the announcer's voice boomed through the hall, she straightened her posture and stepped onto the stage. The applause rose to a crescendo, cameras flashing like lightning strikes. She scanned the crowd, expectant faces, hungry for the marvel she was about to unveil. Somewhere in the gallery, she imagined her younger self sitting there, wide-eyed with wonder and dreaming of moments like this. She began, her voice steady but deliberate. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we redefine what it means to remember. For centuries, our memories have been fleeting, prone to distortion, erosion, and loss. But no longer. The Echo Algorithm is more than a technological breakthrough. It is a bridge between past and present, an opportunity to live with clarity and connection." Her words flowed seamlessly, rehearsed but heartfelt. She explained how the Echo implants, tiny rice-sized devices fitted discreetly into the temple, would allow users to relive their memories with perfect clarity. "Every moment, every conversation, every emotion, accessible with just a thought," she continued. "No longer will we fear forgetting. We will live richer, fuller lives, where every memory becomes a vivid companion." The crowd erupted in applause, the energy in the room electric. But Mara's heart remained heavy. She glanced at the holographic demonstration of the implant in action, a dazzling spectacle of data and imagery. For all its brilliance, she couldn't silence the nagging voice in her mind, the one that whispered warnings of unintended consequences. As the applause subsided, Mara's eyes wandered to the far edges of the gallery. There, standing apart from the crowd, was a figure that froze her in place. He was older now, his face lined with years of hardship, but the unmistakable glint in his eyes struck a chord deep within her. Ethan Calloway, her father. The applause faded into a dull roar in her ears. Ethan didn't move, his expression unreadable as their gazes locked. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Mara reeling. Their last conversation had been a heated argument, a battle of ideologies over the ethics of technology. He had warned her about the dangers of unchecked progress, about losing sight of humanity's fragility. She had dismissed him, convinced of her own path. And now, at the pinnacle of her success, his presence felt like an omen. When the event concluded, Mara found herself retreating to the quiet confines of her office. The echoes of applause and congratulatory remarks haunted her, but so did her father's presence. She sat in silence, her mind replaying the fleeting encounter, her triumph overshadowed by unease. For all the celebration, all the acclaim, a question gnawed at her. Had she truly created a gift for humanity, or a Pandora's box? Chapter 2. The Incident. The world had embraced the Echo Algorithm with open arms, eager to dive headfirst into the promise of perfect memory. The weeks following its launch were a whirlwind of adoption, praise, and awe. Media outlets hailed it as the next evolution of human consciousness, dubbing it the digital renaissance. Millions rushed to have the tiny implants installed, eager to relive their most cherished moments, rewrite forgotten conversations, and revisit the emotions that once defined them. For Dr. Mara Calloway, those weeks were a blur of interviews, conferences, and endless data streams. Her creation had exceeded even her most optimistic projections. Schools reported students using Echo to ace exams, workplaces marveled at increased productivity, and therapists began incorporating it into their practices. Yet, for all the success stories, Mara couldn't shake the unease that lingered at the edges of her consciousness. That morning began like any other. Mara sat in her minimalist office, walls adorned with sleek screens displaying live metrics of the Echo algorithm's global network. Streams of data pulsed across the displays, a symphony of numbers and graphs that mapped the system's seamless integration into society. She sipped her coffee, half listening to the hum of activity in the adjoining workspace, where her team monitored the algorithm's performance. A notification blinked on her main screen. User satisfaction, 99.2%, a near-perfect score. Mara leaned back, allowing herself a brief moment of pride. For all her doubts, the world seemed to be thriving under Echo's influence. The first alarm was subtle, an anomaly in the data stream that went unnoticed by most. A spike in neural feedback rates, isolated to a handful of users. Mara frowned, leaning closer to the screen. "Sam, are you seeing this?" she called out. Sam, seated a few desks away, rolled his chair over to her station. He squinted at the display. "Probably just a glitch. We've seen similar spikes during heavy usage windows." Mara nodded, though the tightness in her chest didn't ease. She made a note to investigate later, brushing it aside for now. But within minutes, the hum of the office grew louder, conversations turning from casual chatter to hurried exchanges. Another alert appeared on her screen. Unresponsive user reports, 78. Her stomach twisted. "Sam, pull up the live feeds from the network," she ordered, her voice sharper now. The screens filled with video feeds from across the globe, each one showing the same surreal tableau. People frozen in place, their eyes wide and glassy. Some wore serene expressions, others seemed locked in terror. In one feed, a woman stood motionless in her kitchen, a knife slipping from her grasp and clattering to the floor. In another, a young boy sat in a classroom, his face a mask of joy as tears streaked down his cheeks. Mara's breath caught. "What the hell is happening?" Sam's voice trembled. "It's like they're stuck, trapped in their own memories." The alerts multiplied, each one more dire than the last. Catatonic user count, 5,024. Network overload. Critical error detected. "Shut it down," Mara commanded, standing abruptly. "Isolate the algorithm and sever its connection to the network." Sam hesitated. "If we cut the network feeds, we could cause permanent damage. The implant relies on the algorithm for cognitive stability." "Do it anyway," Mara snapped, panic surging through her. "We can't let this spread." The team scrambled to execute the shutdown, their movements frantic as more reports flooded in. The screens showed a world descending into chaos, traffic collisions as drivers froze mid-turn, workers collapsing in factories, panicked loved ones shaking unresponsive family members. Then the worst news of all, shutdown failed. Mara's heart sank as the message blinked across every screen. The algorithm had embedded itself too deeply into the user's neural networks. Cutting the connection had severed access to external memories, but left the users adrift in an endless loop of their own making, a purgatory of echoes. Around her, the office was a storm of voices, panic rising like a tide. Sam turned to her, his face pale. "It's spreading faster than we can track. The algorithm, it's too integrated. We can't contain it." Mara's mind raced, searching for a solution, any solution. She gripped the edge of her desk, knuckles white. "Run a diagnostic. We need to understand what triggered this." As the team worked, Mara paced the room, her thoughts a chaotic swirl of guilt and fear. This wasn't just a malfunction, it was a catastrophe. And deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that she should have seen it coming. By midday, the world had erupted into panic. News channels aired live footage of the affected, their frozen forms a chilling reminder of the technology's fragility. Protests broke out in major cities, with angry crowds demanding answers from tech corporations and governments. Conspiracy theories flooded social media, accusing Mara and her team of orchestrating the crisis for profit or control. Through it all, Mara remained at the center of the storm, her creation now a global nightmare. As the day turned to night, she sat in the dim glow of her office, staring at the screens. The faces of the trapped haunted her, their expressions frozen in a liminal space between joy and despair. A message pinged on her private terminal. It was an encrypted file sent from an unknown source. The subject line read, "You knew this could happen." Mara's breath hitched as she opened the file. It contained fragments of code, lines she didn't recognize but were embedded deep within the algorithm. Her heart pounded as realization dawned. This wasn't a random error. Someone had done this deliberately. And whoever it was, they had hidden their tracks well. Chapter 3: Into the Shadows. Chaos was spreading like wildfire. The streets outside the office were no longer a calm sea of everyday life, but a storm of shouting protesters, panicked families, and media vans. Mara had stayed inside, staring at the encrypted code fragments glowing on her screen. Her mind raced, trying to piece together who could have done this and why. The encrypted messages within the algorithm were deliberate, crafted with intent and sophistication far beyond any coding oversight. They weren't hers, nor Sam's, nor anyone else on her trusted team. The thought chilled her. Someone had infiltrated the Echo algorithm long before its release, embedding this disaster within its framework. She paced the room, hands clutching her head. "This isn't sabotage for chaos. It's too calculated," she murmured. Sam, slumped in a chair nearby, rubbed his face with trembling hands. "Mara, we're out of our depth. The systems are too compromised. We can't even isolate the affected users." Mara stopped pacing, her jaw tightening. "This isn't an accident. Someone planned this. And if I'm right," her voice faltered. She couldn't bring herself to say it aloud. "If I'm right, someone close to me did this." Her thoughts turned to the encrypted fragments. The style of the code felt hauntingly familiar, like echoes of an old melody she couldn't quite place. Then it struck her like a bolt of lightning. Her former mentor, Dr. Wright, Alden Jeffries. He had been instrumental in the early stages of the Echo algorithm's development, a brilliant mind who often spoke of pushing humanity beyond its limits. But he had grown disillusioned, retreating from the project years ago. Could he have? "Mara." Sam's voice broke through her thoughts, soft but urgent. "What do we do now?" She turned to him, her gaze steely. "We find out who's behind this, and we fix it, no matter what it takes." Tracking the source of the sabotage wouldn't be easy. With the world on fire, every move she made would be scrutinized. Protesters and journalists were already calling for her resignation, or worse, her arrest. She couldn't trust her team. The scale of the infiltration meant the conspiracy might reach farther than she could imagine. There was only one person she could turn to, someone who understood the darker side of technology better than anyone. Her father, Ethan Calloway. The thought filled her with dread. Their last encounter had been a bitter argument, a clash of ideologies that left their relationship fractured. Ethan had always warned her about the dangers of unchecked progress, of prioritizing innovation over humanity. She had dismissed him then, branding him a technophobe unwilling to evolve with the times. Now, as the world crumbled around her, his warnings echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. It took 2 days to locate him. Ethan had gone entirely off the grid, living in the dense woodlands of a remote region, far from the reach of technology. Using encrypted messages and favors from underground networks, Mara finally tracked down the small, self-sufficient community he had joined. The journey was arduous. Mara abandoned her sleek corporate vehicle miles from the settlement, trekking through dense trees until the canopy swallowed the daylight. When she reached the edge of the community, a guard with a shotgun stepped forward. "No outsiders," he barked. "I'm not staying," Mara replied, holding her hands up in a gesture of peace. "I'm here to see Ethan Calloway." The man scowled, but before he could respond, a familiar voice called from behind him. "Let her through." Mara's heart clenched as her father stepped into view. His hair was streaked with silver, his face weathered, but his sharp eyes remained the same. For a moment, they stood there, neither moving nor speaking, the weight of years pressing between them. "You shouldn't be here," Ethan said finally, his tone neutral. Mara swallowed hard. "Dad, I need your help." Ethan's home was a small, rustic cabin nestled at the edge of the community. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and herbs. Mara glanced around, taking in the shelves lined with books and the workbench cluttered with mechanical tools and scavenged electronics. It was a far cry from the sleek, futuristic labs she was used to. You look tired, Ethan said, setting a cup of tea in front of her. He sat across the table, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. I saw the news. Your algorithm, it's tearing the world apart. Mara flinched but said nothing. Ethan leaned back, folding his arms. Why are you here, Mara? To convince me you were right after all? No, she said softly. You were right, about all of it. The risks, the unintended consequences, I see that now. His expression softened, but only slightly. And yet, here we are. Mara reached into her bag, pulling out a tablet with the encrypted code displayed on the screen. She slid it across the table. Someone sabotaged Echo. I think it was Alden Jeffries. He embedded these fragments into the core algorithm years ago, but I don't know how to untangle them. Ethan studied the screen in silence, his brow furrowed as he examined the code, his fingers tracing the lines as if searching for something hidden between them. After several minutes, he set the tablet down. This isn't just sabotage. These are exploits. They're designed to manipulate the algorithm's core functions while masking their origin. Can you help me? Mara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'll try, but if Jeffries did this, he didn't just want to destroy Echo. He wanted to control it. Mara felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Ethan met her gaze, his expression grim. These fragments, they're not just traps, they're instructions. Whoever controls this code doesn't just trap people in their memories. They control what those memories are. Mara sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Echo wasn't just malfunctioning, it was a weapon, one capable of rewriting reality itself. And someone had already pulled the trigger. Chapter 4: The Heart of Betrayal. Mara barely slept that night, the weight of Ethan's revelation pressing on her like a suffocating fog. The Echo algorithm wasn't just malfunctioning, it was being weaponized. The implications were terrifying. Millions of people trapped in manipulated versions of their own memories, their perceptions subtly, or not so subtly, altered by a hidden hand. As dawn broke over the forest, Mara and Ethan sat at his cluttered workbench, poring over the code. Ethan's sharp mind, though dulled by years away from the cutting edge, quickly began piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. The encrypted messages weren't just sabotage. They were commands, intricately designed to exploit the very foundation of the algorithm. These instructions, Ethan said, pointing to a line of code, aren't random. They're tailored to Echo's core functions. Whoever wrote this knows the system as well as you do, maybe better. Mara leaned over his shoulder, her brow furrowed. So it has to be Alden Jeffries. He had access to the core during the early development stages, and he was the only one who questioned its purpose as much as he did its potential. Ethan gave her a sidelong glance. Are you sure about him? People don't usually turn on their life's work without a reason. Mara's mind reeled with memories of her former mentor. Alden had always been a visionary, but his ambitions often strayed into dangerous territory. She remembered late-night debates in the lab, his voice carrying a conviction that sometimes bordered on obsession. The world isn't ready for this, he'd told her once, pacing like a caged animal. They'll abuse it, turn it into another tool for control. If we're going to release Echo, we have to be the ones to guide its use, or it will guide them. At the time, she dismissed his warnings as the paranoia of a brilliant but eccentric mind. Now those words carried a sinister weight. We need to find him, Mara said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. If he's behind this, he's the only one who can stop it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And what makes you think he'll cooperate? Mara hesitated. I don't, but I don't have a choice. The hunt for Alden, tracking. Alden Jeffries was no easy task. After leaving the project years ago, he had vanished from public life, retreating into the shadows. His last known location was a remote lab funded by a private think tank, but beyond that, there were no traces, no digital footprints, no paper trails. Using the skills she'd honed over years in the tech world, Mara hacked into old corporate records, tracing obscure transactions and encrypted communications. Ethan worked alongside her, his old-school methods complementing her digital expertise. Finally, after hours of searching, they found a lead, a series of encrypted messages routed through an anonymous server. The messages, though heavily masked, hinted at clandestine meetings and secret projects. One message stood out, a time-stamped location, an abandoned research facility on the outskirts of the city. It's him, Mara said, her voice resolute. It has to be. The confrontation, the facility was a relic of the past, its rusted gates groaning as Mara and Ethan pushed them open. Overgrown weeds snaked through cracks in the pavement, and the air smelled of damp and decay. Inside, the corridors were dark and cold, the hum of distant machinery the only sound. They found Alden in a dimly lit room at the heart of the facility, surrounded by a maze of monitors and servers. His once brilliant blue eyes were sunken, his face lined with years of sleepless nights and obsessive work. He didn't look surprised to see them. "Mara," he said, his voice low but steady, "I wondered how long it would take you." She stepped forward, her jaw tight. "You did this. You sabotaged Echo. Why?" Alden tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Sabotage? Is that what you think this is?" "What else would you call it?" she snapped. "You've trapped millions of people in their own memories. You've destroyed lives." Alden's lips curled into a faint smile. "Destroyed? No, Mara. I've freed them. Echo wasn't just a tool for memory. It was a gateway, a way to reshape the human experience, to bring harmony to a fractured world." Mara felt a surge of anger. "Harmony? You call this harmony? People are catatonic, their minds looping endlessly. This isn't evolution. It's enslavement." Alden's smile faded, his eyes narrowing. "You still don't see it, do you? The world was already enslaved to chaos, to pain, to the mistakes of the past. Echo was my chance to fix that, to give humanity a purpose, a vision." Mara stared at him, her mind racing. His words were chilling, but they revealed something deeper. Alden wasn't just trying to sabotage Echo. He was trying to control it, to use it as a means of shaping humanity according to his vision. "You had no right," she said, her voice trembling. "No one has the right to play God." Alden's gaze softened, almost pitying. "And yet, here you are, Mara, the architect of Echo, standing on the ashes of her creation. Tell me, how does it feel to hold the fate of humanity in your hands?" The choice. The confrontation escalated as Alden revealed the full extent of his plan. He had built a fail-safe into the Echo algorithm, a final command that would overwrite all existing memories with a unified narrative, a utopia of his own design. It was the ultimate control, a way to end the chaos and suffering he believed plagued humanity. Mara was horrified. "You're insane," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alden shrugged. "Perhaps, but isn't all progress born from a little madness?" Ethan, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "This isn't progress, Alden. It's tyranny." The room fell silent as the three of them stood locked in a tense standoff. Mara knew what she had to do, but the weight of the decision was almost unbearable. Destroying the algorithm would free those trapped, but it would also erase everything she had worked for. Worse, it would leave humanity vulnerable to the next technological exploit. "Dad," she said softly, turning to Ethan. "What do we do?" Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You already know the answer, Mara. You just have to be brave enough to act." Chapter 5. The Echo Decision. The silence in the room was suffocating. Mara stood at the center of it all, her father at her side and Alden Jeffries before her, a man consumed by his vision of progress. Around them, the monitors displayed scenes of devastation, streets filled with protests, hospitals overwhelmed by catatonic patients, and news anchors desperately seeking answers. Mara's hand hovered over the console. The command prompt glowed faintly on the central screen, awaiting her input. One keystroke could dismantle the Echo algorithm, severing its hold on millions of minds. But it would also destroy everything she had built, the culmination of years of work and sacrifice. "You're hesitating," Alden said, his voice calm but cutting. "I understand. It's not an easy choice, but before you act, think of the possibilities. Echo can still be salvaged. With the right guidance, it could bring order to a chaotic world." Mara turned to him, anger flaring in her chest. "Order? By erasing free will? By trapping people in false memories?" "Not false," Alden countered, his eyes burning with conviction. "Better. Memories without pain, without regret. A world where humanity can finally thrive." Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. "Alden, you've convinced yourself that control is the answer. But you're not fixing humanity, you're stealing its essence. Progress isn't about erasing the past, it's about learning from it." Alden's face darkened, his composure cracking. "And what has humanity learned, Ethan? War? Greed? Despair? This isn't theft, it's salvation." Mara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had spent her entire career chasing the dream of progress, of pushing the boundaries of human potential. But now, standing on the precipice of what that dream had wrought, she felt the weight of its unintended consequences. The dismantling Mara's fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. The code in front of her was complex, the product of countless sleepless nights and relentless ambition. She thought of the people trapped in their memories, reliving their happiest moments or their worst nightmares on an endless loop. She thought of the protests, the fear and anger spreading like wildfire across the globe. But most of all, she thought of the responsibility she bore, the power to undo the damage, even at the cost of her legacy. Her hands steadied. She began typing, her movements deliberate and precise. The command to dismantle the echo algorithm unfolded line by line, stripping away the layers of Alden's sabotage and the core functions that had made the technology so powerful. "No," Alden shouted, lunging forward. Ethan stepped in his path, holding him back with surprising strength for his age. "You don't get to decide for all of us," Mara said, her voice firm. "No one does." The final keystroke sent a ripple through the network. The monitors flickered, their images freezing for a moment before dissolving into static. A low hum filled the room, the sound of servers powering down and systems disconnecting. Across the globe, millions of people began to stir, their eyes fluttering open as they were freed from the grip of the algorithm. Mara sat back, her chest heaving as the enormity of what she had done washed over her. The echo algorithm was gone, reduced to a digital graveyard of ones and zeros. For a moment, the weight of relief threatened to crush her. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing." She nodded, though her heart ached. The technology she had poured her soul into, the dream she had spent years chasing, was gone. But in its place, there was hope. Hope that humanity could move forward, flawed but free. The aftermath. The days that followed were a blur. News of the algorithm's dismantling spread quickly, accompanied by footage of people waking from their catatonic states. There were tears of joy, reunions, and gratitude. But there was also anger. Anger at Mara, at her team, and at the corporations that had allowed the technology to spiral out of control. Mara faced the backlash head-on. She resigned from her position, stepping away from the tech industry entirely. In interviews, she took full responsibility for the crisis, refusing to shift blame or hide behind excuses. "I believed I was creating something to better humanity," she said in one broadcast. "But I didn't consider the consequences. That's on me." Ethan stayed by her side, a quiet but unwavering presence. Together, they began advocating for stricter ethical guidelines in technology, pushing for transparency and accountability in innovation. Their efforts sparked a global conversation about the role of technology in society, a dialogue that would shape the future for years to come. The confrontation's cost. Alden Jeffries disappeared after the dismantling of the algorithm. Some believed he had gone into hiding, while others speculated that he was working on another project, far from the public eye. For Mara, his absence was a bitter reminder of the cost of ambition unchecked by empathy. The echo algorithm became a cautionary tale, a symbol of humanity's tendency to reach too far, too fast. But it also served as a testament to resilience, the ability to acknowledge mistakes, to learn from them, and to rebuild. Mara, for her part, found solace in the simple things: long walks in the woods, shared meals with her father, and the fleeting beauty of unaltered memories.